Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It is time to have a look at some dev server leaks which have come out. There's some ships, there's some new missiles, and also new maps and reworks. I'll leave some timestamps in the description so you can have a look at all the stuff that you want to. There is a bunch of cool stuff here, and many which will be fun to look at. Anyway, let's get into it. The first piece of news is an abandoned factory tank map rework. Abandoned factory is one of those which has become pretty solidly played in a single way. You forget about the south and you all go hammer in the north. That's something which has been going on for a long time, and usually when a lot of the map is ignored, Gaijin try and change it up to make it so people actually play the rest of it. We'll have to see how it goes. Some of the map reworks have been good, some of them not so good, like Wallonia for example, but overall I'd say they've been pretty positive. They're doing a ton of map changes in this update as well, not just to ground maps, but also to naval and aviation too, so there's just a ton of stuff going on. But the abandoned factory tank map rework is probably for a future update. There is also going to be a Rhineland tank map, but also a snow version of it. So this could be Advanced to the Rhine, which is of course the city map. Maybe there'll be a winter version of that, or maybe it'll be a bit more open in just general Rhineland itself. Rhineland is one of those places which obviously had a large part to play in the Second World War, starting off even pre-World War II, where of course Germany marched into it to seize it back, since it was seen that it was taken from them basically in an unjust fashion through the Treaty of Versailles. So it was one of the main catalysts which eventually ended up in the Large War, and then it was retaken back in 1945 by the Allied forces which were marching from the west. So as a area, there is a lot of cool stuff that you could have, but also since it's a snow version of a Rhineland tank map, my guess is it'll be something that's already in the game. The snow versions of maps have been quite nice. I think it's good to have a bit of variety. One of the issues that is definitely true with having these snow maps, though, is it's very easy to see tanks on them if you're in the air. So for CAS elements, especially at higher echelons, it's super easy to see people around the place. So yeah, you can kind of donk on them, and it kind of sucks. So they've got to be a bit careful of that. I mean, obviously you can get snow camos a lot easier now, but it still takes a while to get some of them. We also have a battleship for the Soviets. This is the Oktyabrskaya Revolutsiya, which is the Gangut, but a modernized version of the Gangut. The Gangut is one of those which I've heard about for a long time from people. Basically, it's a very early Russian battleship from 1911, very similar to a lot of the other high-end battleships that the Russians have in the game. It has a decent set of guns, 4 triple 12-inch ones, and also has a pretty low profile, but the machine itself was launched in 1911, showing it's quite old. The actual modernization of it, though, happened with obviously the Oktyabrskaya Revolutsiya, and it was refitted basically between 1918 and 1925. They changed the name because, of course, you have the old Russian Empire and then you have the new Soviet Union, and they did a bunch of changes to it. I'll read the Wikipedia setup for it just to kind of show you what they did. So the tubular tower mast was replaced by a larger and sturdier structure with a KDP-6 fire control director equipped with 2 6-meter Zeiss rangefinders positioned on the top. The aft superstructure was enlarged, and a new structure was built just forward of it, with another KDP-6 director surmounting it, which required the repositioning of the main mast 9 meters forward. This did not leave enough room for a derrick, as was used on the Marat, so 2 large boat cranes were mounted on each side of the main mast. Her funnel was curved to the rear rather than angled like the Marat. Each turret received Italian 8-meter rangefinders, and their roof armor was increased to 152mm in thickness. A new forecastle, much like that of the Murat, was fitted to improve seakeeping. 6 76.2mm 34K anti-aircraft guns were added, 3 on the roofs of the fore and aft turrets. All 25 of her old boilers were replaced by a dozen oil-fired boilers originally intended for the Borodino-class battlecruiser, the Ismail. The space saved was used to add another inboard longitudinal watertight bulkhead that greatly improved her underwater protection. Her original Pollen Argo clock mechanical fire control computer was upgraded with a copy of a Vickers Limited fire control computer, designated the Akur by the Soviets, as well as a copy of a Sperry stable vertical gyroscope. These changes increased her displacement to 26,690 tons at full load and her overall length to 184.9 meters. Her metacentric height decreased to 1.67 meters from her designed 1.76 meters as a result of her enlarged superstructures. So you can see there is quite a large difference between the standard Gangut and its upgrade, making a completely new ship. We also have another Pr.123K, which is a little vehicle we already have in the game for the Soviets. This one is a hydrofoil kind of PT boat, which the Soviets have access to, or an MTB is what they class it as. There's a few Pr.123s in the game itself. The K is, though, here, and it looks like there's going to be a Bangladesh version. The Bangladeshis, I'm guessing, did use it. The Pr.123K was very much exported to a lot of different places. 100 of them were exported out of the 205 that were built between the late 40s and the early 50s. There might be a difference between them, basically single and also dual hydrofoils. Maybe that'll be the difference. And also, at the same time, some of them had radar and some of them did not. So it might be quite a nice little premium. You also have 2 Japanese destroyers. The first one is the Hatsu and also the Tade or the Tad. Tade is how it's spelled. Both of these are Momi class destroyers, so nothing really too powerful with them. And also both of them don't really have a crazy service history. Both of them obviously were laid down in the 1920s in Japan, and also had the 3 single 120mm plus some torpedo tubes. They had absolutely no secondary armament in the form of guns. Both of these did serve during the Second World War. One of them, in the form of the Tade, was actually converted into a patrol boat and got torpedoed by a US submarine. The other one, the Hatsu, survived the war, but then it was scuttled in 1946 and technically retired in 1945. Both of these just, didn't really have crazy service lives. I'm guessing they're going to bolster the start of the Japanese tech tree, and that is kind of surprising, if I'm honest with you, with 2 of these. The next one is an AIM-120 variant, but this is a ground-launched AIM-120, and it has the best name ever. It is the SLAMRAAM. The SLAMRAAM, which is the surface-launched AMRAAM, was obviously developed by the United States Army, and the idea was, instead of just having an air-to-air version of the AIM-120, why not create a ground-based one, or a surface-to-air missile for it? So they created a launcher around the Humvee, of all things, and basically you could have 4 of the SLAMRAAMs on it, and also 2 AIM-9Xs, which are of course the very modern, very powerful Sidewinder. And this, in general, was something which was tried and tested, but the program itself was pretty much terminated because it didn't really fit into the budget, which is kind of sad. There was a lot of other countries that had a look at this, though, and kind of wondered if they wanted to have it too. So, yeah, it's one of those things which is quite fun. But the main thing is it should be mounted on a Humvee, and it's a bunch of AMRAAMs which can fire, obviously, at targets, which is quite fun. And since they're active radar homing missiles, technically they can kind of guide themselves. Now, there is another ground-launched version of an air-to-air missile. This one is the IRIS-T. This one is an infrared imaging system tail or thrust-vectored controlled medium-range infrared homing air-to-air missile. The other name for it in American service, I believe, or at least tested by America, is the AIM 2000, which shouldn't be too surprising. This idea, or this missile, was developed by many different countries, the main one seen as Germany, and it was a NATO push to try and replace the AIM-9 Sidewinder. What ended up happening, though, is they're still developing it, which shouldn't be too surprising, and it is continuing to go forward, and one of the variants that they've been working on is a surface-to-air version of it. So this is an incredibly modern version of it. There are a bunch of different versions, so you have the IRIS-T SLS, which is the short-range one, the SLM, which is the medium-range, and the SLX, which is the long-range variant, which has a dual mode of IR and RF. But remember, this one is meant to be more IR, but the idea is, at least at the start of its launch, from the surface-to-air point of view, it is aided by a GPS inertial navigation system and also a radar data link for command guidance, and then it will follow itself in later on. These are usually launched from different types of trucks. My guess is this is linked to those vehicles that they talked about previously, you know, with the big radar vehicles coming in. This one's could easily come in. The IRIS-T has a range, depending on which one they decide to put in, of either 12 kilometers up to 80 kilometers, which could be kind of crazy. So we'll have to see what goes on with it. That's all the leaks at the moment from the dev server. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.